Hello, everyone. This is Vikram Prakash, and you are yet once again listening to Architecture Talk as we try and continue to advance the frontier of architectural thinking through cross disciplinary thinkers of various color and hue. It's early 2024, and I am now initiating a series of new conversations which I hope have a little more intention and direction to them, and take on a series of topics which I think are of great significance today, in particularly those concerning sustainable thinking, transhuman epistemologies, and, of course, indigenous knowledge systems, in particularly those that I'm more familiar with, those of South Asia. In service of this, today I'm bringing to you a conversation that I had with my good friend Neelkanth Chhaya, professor of architecture from Ahmedabad, India, with whom I have sporadically had a series of really fascinating conversations into the forms and contentions of South Asian aesthetic theory. Neelkanth Chhaya is a very open-minded and inquisitive thinker. He's not wedded to a particular way of being in the world and a particular thought process, but works hard to examine the ideas and precepts that he finds them interesting, and is not hesitant to cross-reference them with any contemporary thinking from around the world. So we are talking about South Asian Indic aesthetic theory, and I hope to follow up this conversation with others of this kind with Chhaya in the future. I hope you enjoy this, and if you have any thoughts or conversations or thoughts about this, please do not hesitate to get hold of me, vikram.prakash@gmail.com. Here we go.
Architecture is really the art and science of turning fiction into fact.
Sometimes kind of real architectural life interferes with intellectual architectural life.
There is no such thing as architecture.
Professor Neelkanth Chhaya, welcome back to Architecture Talk. It's been, I think, 4 or 5 years since we last recorded. Yes. We had a wonderful conversation. And I also have such good memories of one of the great advantages of COVID was we were all online. And I think you invited me to be a critic on your Poche studio.
Poche studio, yes.
It
was fantastic, huh? That was so nice.
That was 2020 or something like that.
Yeah.
That was such a wonderful studio. I mean, I enjoyed the work also, but as much as that, I enjoyed all the conversations. You had such excellent speakers who came to that entire studio series. And as I tell many people, the Kishkinda lecture that you introduced me through via Arsha Satar has become a staple for me in our conceptual practice over here.
Yes, and you have taken it very far and very nicely. I enjoyed the studio that you ran with that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and in fact, that's now been exhibited at many places. So I have been learning from you for a very long time. From the early 90s in SEPT. I think we somehow ended up co-teaching studio. I don't know how that happened.
That's right. We also did one lecture where you were talking about deconstruction and I was opposing you.
Yes. That was such a good
I can't forget that one. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, those were good fun. Good times, good fun. That was really enjoyable. Good sense of conversation and critique and back and forth, which is what an academic institution should be.
In addition to chai.
Of course. Yeah, chai and conversation. That's architecture. Yes. In fact, somebody's review I was sitting on, and I said, architecture is conversation. And I think Louis Kahn said that also once, did he? That architecture
I think so.
is conversation. But he meant conversation amongst building elements. But I really think architecture is conversation, as conversation in many formats amongst human and non-human people. I mean, it's just it's this opportunity
Yes.
to think about what it is to be alive and be in the world.
Mm, mm, mm.
But anyway, let's just back up a little bit. So now you're retired from SEPT mostly, I understand. But
Yeah.
so where are you? Are you still practicing? What's going on with your life?
Well, I do continue my practice, and right now we are doing about 4 projects. We do few projects at a time.
Yeah.
And very varied. One is a hospital, one is a youth camp, one tour houses. But my office is run like a studio, like
Uh-huh.
yeah. So there are a number of young architects, and we all, for every project, we make all the designs. All of us design, and
Okay.
then we start discussing, and then something emerges out of that,
Yeah.
and it's very interesting. It's like there's no time schedule. We we work as per our yes.
What do you mean?
So
There is no clients breathing down your neck
they are
and
breathing, but then one has to use one's charm and friendships and so on. Mostly the clients know that this firm is very slow, but they know what we work with. So I have few who stick on, who continue to come to us. So
Yeah.
that's one part of what I'm doing. On the other side, I am doing a lot of academic work as well.
Okay.
I'm associated with the Srishti Institute of Art, Design and Technology at Bangalore,
Okay.
and I hold the UNESCO chair there.
UNESCO chair. Okay.
Yes, and so it's a chair in sustainability, livelihoods, and heritage. These 3
Oh,
are
wonderful.
connected. Yes, so it's a very interesting chair.
Sustainability, livelihoods, and heritage. Okay.
Yes, yes. So the point is that we came to the conclusion that heritage in itself is only a result of what went on in people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have to work with keeping something alive, then we have to work on livelihoods. We also have to work on the physical environment and sustainability. So all these 3 are interconnected. And that's how that chair got named. So I teach at Srishti from time to time. And I also hold this chair and initiate activities of research, etc. So that's my other. And then, of course, I do a lot of talks to architecture schools, participate in juries, and so I'm fairly active. This week, for example, I'm traveling 2 days to Chandigarh. Next week, I'll be going to SPA Delhi. Like that, it keeps on going on. So I'm quite active and keeps me on my toes.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So how big is your practice? How many people are working with you at a time in general?
Oh, very small, very small. We have 4 architects.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah.
And two interns.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Now, the usual question. So are you doing everything by hand or by computers?
Both. For example, a lot of the things when we are discussing, we use sketching, and we make models by hand also. But then immediately it moves into the digital format, of which I am an absolute master at that. All I have to do is to sit next to someone and say, okay, now extend that line. That kind of thing. So I know all the commands.
Yes. Well, that's coming. With AI, you will actually be able to do that. So
yes, I know. But I prefer the human fellow sitting there and then I'm giving commands.
Right. Right. That's good. That's good. So how do you think your design philosophy, your practice design philosophy has evolved in the last decade or particularly the last 4 or 5 years,
Yes.
What has changed? What changes are you noticing in your thinking?
Well, first of all, I'm beginning to look less and less as a work of architecture as being an object.
Mm.
It is a phenomenon, it's a transitional phase in a kind of continual transformation between many kinds of selves. So you have, for example, if you are in Ahmedabad, the mouse who eats up your paper is as much a part of your architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've stopped looking at only the human being as the controller of precise conditions that. So the one thing that I've come to the conclusion is that you cannot and should not try to achieve precise control, because things change so much. COVID taught us that change is like you cannot expect something and it happens.
Right.
And so you have to make something which is sort of, one way of putting it is it's sort of half finished.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the other way of looking at it is to say that it is an artifact which presents itself for modification,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for being used, for being part of an active process. Just as,
So,
for example,
no,
when
is
we
this
see
there, there's an older thinking about incremental housing, where you did
yes,
some things and
yeah,
left the rest to the client. Is along
yeah.
the same lines or more or different?
Well, that's a beginning point.
Oh,
For example, after the earthquake, whatever we built was of that kind.
yeah.
But more than incrementality still sees a building as an object, which creates very specific conditions of safety, for example, or of climatic response, and so on.
Right.
But if you start seeing the envelope as being more like a sort of fabric which is continually changing. So if you see the tree, for example, if you see a tree, in different seasons, its bark becomes different.
Right.
It is able to respond to climate and so on and so forth, but not always. It is on the way to resolving something. It is never fully resolved, because by the time you resolve it, it's into another phase. So therefore, the building has to be thought of as somewhere where many kinds of creatures are continually working at it, right from funguses and mushrooms and bacteria up to human beings and perhaps something else. I don't know. There might be superior beings to humankind. So anyway, so it has to have a kind of a stance. It's more about the stance rather than the shape. The stance that a building takes is of responding to the world and being open to that. Now, this is very difficult to describe. My nearest association is with music, in Indian music. So in Indian music, you have a very strict system of rules for what you sing. The raga. But when you actually sing, if you sing it according to the textbook, nobody will come to listen to you. When you sing, you actually stop. You're trying to find something. You often talk to the audience, and that is not an audience. There's actually a community which is participating in the act of music coming into existence. And for example, I'll give you an example. Once in the School of Architecture, we had invited Kumar Gandharva to sing. And it was
great Kumar Gandharva.
Yes. And the studios, it was organized in the studio. We had put gaddas and mattresses. Everybody was sitting on the floor, and he was on a very low stage. And the doors were open, windows were open. And he was singing a bandish, which was in Hindi, the words are Chidiya choo choo gaye, which means the bird sings choo choo, like that. And At that moment, two pigeons flew into the room, and he stopped and pointed upwards and said, "Dekho, chidiya aa gayi." So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of responsiveness, it's very
Yes.
difficult. But we have things like doors, windows, we have verandas, we have all kinds of things which allow us to keep on using spaces in different ways, so that in the end, you stop naming spaces and you qualify them rather than define them.
Sure.
And that, I think, is one of the things that has changed quite a lot in my thinking. That I used to work with the idea you have to define what is the institution in the Kanyan sense, and then find the form for,
Right.
and then design follows, and so
Right.
on.
Right.
Now, the institution is actually an active phenomenon. It's not frozen. It's, yeah. And for example, again, to take Khan's example, if you take school, and he said it starts with the man sitting under the tree,
Right.
teaching some, yeah, and then he goes on to find form for it and design. I would rather think that if you say that there is air, water, seasons, trees, and all the time we are learning, but we sit in a particular place to maybe attend to a possibility of learning, and then it becomes an action rather than a form.
Right.
And
Right. Right. Right.
how do you encourage, how do you find an architecture which is based on the inhabitation, which is based on the actions that will happen or may happen there, and how do you keep it so open that it doesn't get frozen? And of course, in India, it's much easier to do. Our climate is such that we can make virtually naked buildings,
That's
as we
true.
do.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
You
That's
know,
true. But
and
yeah, no, but even like Glenn Murcutt used to say, if it gets cold, put on a sweater. I mean, you
yes,
don't have
absolutely.
to work with a 72-degree climate controlled interiors,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because when he was
Yeah,
teaching
great.
here with us,
Yeah.
I want to interrogate this a little bit more. To return a little bit to the earlier thing you were talking about, making architecture, what I heard was making architecture so that it's not in the traditional sense, which is a sort of making solid the
Mm,
institutions of man in an
mm,
ethical and beautiful manner.
mm.
Rather, it is more of a adding to or insertion into an ongoing happening
Absolutely.
of life, the
Yes,
flowing of
yes,
life, which is
yes,
multi-species, multidisciplinary, multi-nucleated,
yes,
and we are simply adding a thread into that
yes.
larger
Also,
ongoing.
yes, and it has a long line. You are walking on a line or on a thread which started thousands of years ago. And
Yes.
in that sense, the institution is there, but it is continually changing or continually responding to new conditions. And therefore, what you make is also going to be not superseded, but it's going to become modified, it's going to change. And to keep that in mind is a very interesting way of thinking about, rather than saying, this is the perfect object I have made. And then that perfect object should not change. And
No, but is that it? Is that it? It seems to me more powerful than saying we have to be adaptable and changeable. I'm
mm,
dumbing down what you're trying to. I'm just
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
purposes of a discussion. I mean,
Yes.
of course, we have to be adaptable and changeable and transformable, reusable, but that's not what I'm hearing you say. Is that if seen truly,
Mm,
the architectural object, like everything else in life, is already changed by the time it comes into being in the world. So that
Yes.
change
Yeah.
is all that's taking place. And it's
Yes.
better to
Yes.
recognize that and get into sync with that than thinking, well, I should build something which might change in 5 years with change in client and time. Yes?
Yes. 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 Yes, that's true. I think you put it very well. Let me try to reframe what I was saying. There's an ongoing phenomenon of worlding,
Hmm.
in
Worlding is a good
which,
term. Yeah.
yes, and we are swimming in that sort of huge phenomenon that's happening. We
Yeah.
are tiny, but still we have legs, we have arms, and we can swim.
Yeah.
And of course we can do all kinds of things. And the joy of making is, how do I swim in a way in which I'll be ready for the next phenomenon? That I don't use up all my energy, I don't use up all my muscle power. I keep it and I nurture it all the time. And the act of design, I think, is an act of nurturing a richness which is ever present but changing. And I think this is something which is very, very wonderful, that you understand that you are endowed with a million other species around you, and you are endowed with a sense of action, and you can act, but that act, you don't know exactly what will be its results. And that gives you a freedom of a different kind, that you say, all right, let's try. I think that's in all the phenomena around us now. We are beginning to see a kind of emphasis on responsiveness rather than on absolute ability or absolute skillfulness. And I think this is something which is very, very interesting in architecture, because then you are making something, as well, Khan would have called it, an offering to the silence.
The
Yeah.
silence.
Yes.
Yes. But let's not go down Khan Road. Stay on the Chhaya stream.
Which means actually Chhaya means shade, that.
Chhaya means shade. Chhaya means shade.
Shady
Chhatra
fellow.
Chhaya, under the nick. No, but this is a very interesting thing. I really liked your phrasing
Mm,
of designing or
mm.
creativity as a kind of a nurturing of what was your phrase? Nurturing of uh,
Richness.
richness, nurturing
Yes.
of richness, nurturing
Yes.
of richness. I saw you sort of kind of articulate it into what I would call agency. What
Yes.
is design agency? What is it to
Yes.
do design, which in the
Mm,
old modernist world was, you were the author, or
mm, mm,
you produced a certain subjectivity, and you produced a response to the world through
mm.
a fully stabled and controlled self. But this is a
Yes.
different thing. So nurturing richness, I want to
Mm,
learn a little bit more about what does nurturing richness mean? What does
mm.
it look like? And I think there is something in here, and you said as an analogy, but I think actually a continuity with music. Let's say,
Yes.
stay with Indian classical music, where riyaz, or sort of the practice and performance of music,
Yes.
is also described as a kind of a nurturing of richness. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
what is nurturing of richness? If I walk into a studio and say nurture richness, my students are going to, slap me. What about what I have to explain?
Yes. Yes. So this we can only, it's a meta state. When we talk about it as nurturing richness, we are not doing the thing there. We are trying to describe it.
Yeah.
So naturally, we can't talk in the studio like that. But one of the phenomena is to say, take up something which has a definiteness. Say, for example, how do I respond to the heat of Ahmedabad? It's a definite thing. And then I talk about shade, I talk about etc., etc.
Mhm.
But while doing that, what are the accidental phenomena which are available around you? And it might be the bird which is speaking outside the window. It might be a gust of wind. It might be somebody who comes to sell an air conditioner. It might be seeing an elephant walk on the street. It might be anything. And see the wrinkles and the flesh and all that. And it everything then stimulates a certain say, hey, look, that's almost like taking care of the heat. Yeah. And then the interaction of the definite and the accidental or the opportune is something which gives your consciousness a certain pliability.
Right.
Because of that, it's able to catch on to things or let them go, and it's much richer than saying, okay, let me sit down and work. You know.
Yeah, let me argue with you on your use of words accidental, because it seems to me that if all these other things, like if you're talking shade, I'm sitting, we were talking Ahmedabad, the heat, and then we were talking shade, and I was in Sarkhej, and I was looking at all those things over there with the beautiful complex.
Yes.
I think 14th, 15th century, somewhere there.
Yeah.
And then you talked about the birds sitting around, and then there is the cow shit on the ground, and then there is the air, and then there is the truck driving by. So I think we tend to think of the other two definite as being accidental, but maybe some of the, it's actually, wouldn't you say? I think what you're trying to say is these are all part of it, right? They're all corollary.
Yes.
They're all part of the package.
Yes.
Right?
But
It's all the parivar, the family, the socius that comes with it. Yes.
Yeah. So the worlding is, of course, including everything that's going on.
Yeah, that's the worlding of things.
Worlding. But the selection that I'm working on this makes the other things sort of normally you see them as phenomena which you did not bargain for. And therefore we see them as accidents.
Actually,
but
yes, that's
of
right.
course they are not accidents. They are not accidents. They are just worlding. But it's helpful to know that I will find out not by absolute focus, but by having a dual consciousness, a consciousness which can focus, but which can also open up. And this is in riyaz, when you practice, if you are at first, when you are learning, your practice is very mechanical. But as you become skilled, then you have space for listening while you are playing or singing. And you listen to yourself, and you listen to how your voice cracked when you were singing, or some possibility, because a note went slightly off, and you said, "Oh no, but this is quite interesting. Let me follow that." And it is something which the utter focus on the task in hand does not allow.
Yes.
So riyaz is a double-edged thing. It is focus. But once you reach a certain skill level, it is a width.
Yes. It is indeed inviting. The more skilled you become, the more you can invite in error and chance. Yes. Which is a funny thing, I sometimes talk about in the very long phase, evolution. We're talking millions of years. Depends on errors in DNA copy.
Absolutely.
The whole point of DNA is not to make a mistake. Right? DNA dedicates itself to not making a mistake, but we are counting on it on making a mistake.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what happens with our work also, because if I look back at all the works that I've done, most of the important things happened while I was concentrating on something, and something crept into this thing. And I said, wow, this is possible. And then it changed. And I think this is something which is in the studio, especially, it's very, very useful. that the student develops a certain double edge.
Or triple edge, maybe even.
Triple edge, yes. It could be many.
Or really, produces some kind of permeability into the single consciousness.
Yes.
So
But now that is not possible if there is only a single consciousness.
Yeah.
At least the other kinds of consciousnesses around us, they have a role to play. But increasingly I find that in working, if there is a group of at least 7 people, there is a chance that somebody might make a remark which leads to something else. And now I'm talking in practical terms about this inviting richness. And in that, I found that the idea of a single consciousness is limiting. And the things that happen. So often now what I do in my design studios is to ask to play a sort of Chinese whispers. So every time I do a studio, I don't announce it beforehand, but suddenly I say, okay, now you have to give it to your next guy. And the design moves. And by the time it comes back to the person who did it, she's discovered all kinds of potentialities. Also, she's very angry that her design has been mauled. And then the resolution of that anger combined with the sense that, wow, that guy has done something, that leads to a different consciousness about what you're doing.
But do you also,
I use it in the office all the time.
Do you also allow the rats to eat the drawing? Do you allow the multi-species, other kinds of possibilities to creep in?
There's no way I can avoid it. there is one rat whom we have been trying to find for more than a month now. And we haven't managed. Yesterday we were talking about this, in fact, and we had some very important guests. And here is this rat who comes and appears on top of a monitor and sits there in front of this distinguished audience. And, and it's quite it can make you feel very uncomfortable. But then that's what is there also. And then mosquitoes, there are pigeons and so many other things, but also irritating figures who work in the same office building, and itinerant salespeople, and so on and on and on. It doesn't end.
But you sound much more enlightened than me, Chhaya. I mean, I have a much shorter fuse. I feel conversation can get really poisoned quickly. You can be in the wrong place, wrong group, and conversations can also go south. Do you not think?
Yes, it's possible. Yes, it's absolutely possible. I've been thinking about this because I used to be a very angry young man. And my old students tell me that I've just softened up and I'm useless now because I don't fire people as I used to. But more and more I realize that when we say a conversation is going south, there's something in it which is bothering us. And paying attention to that is very interesting.
Sure.
So, for example, you may dislike a certain way of making decisions. And then there is somebody who insists on doing it that way. And then you say, now what shall we do with this guy? And until that person shows your potential, which might lead somewhere, but at least it can modify your own outlook to some extent. And I'm finding that the more we do that in the world, rather than right now, we are all shouting at each other in all kinds of ways. And it's very important that for a while, we stop doing that. And I say, okay, I'm just a buffoon. I don't know anything. And maybe something the other guy might know. He also is a buffoon. and we are both floundering around in this swimming thing, which is worlding. And you start realizing that the other person is also floundering the same way as you are, except that you maybe have had some experiences which that person has had not, and they may have had other experiences which you haven't had. And this is becoming very interesting to me, whether it's with human beings or with other species.
Well, okay, but what if this other person is the prime minister of the country or CEO of a major corporation?
Yeah.
We have dug ourselves into a hole of the, climate crisis now. We are headed down in a direction
Yes.
where we may be facing a existential crisis.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
Yes.
how much patience? What is your
No,
thinking
not
about the
patience.
climate
Not
crisis?
patience. Not patience. There are several ways in which we can participate in what's going on about the climate crisis.
Yeah.
First, at the individual level, we can do a lot. Yeah. And if we have friends and we have people whom we know, they start looking at you, and it does have an effect, I've found. That's one. Second, especially in speaking to young people, raising questions about how we do things is another way. You can see that amongst the young, well, at least part of the young, the urgency of changing the way of life has become very strong. And that happened because they were talking to each other, they were talking to other people who had thought it through. And so I think one of the things we can do is to articulate our understanding as well as we can and hope that it will. Of course, at the other end of the spectrum, one can become an activist, one can go into politics, but that's a personal choice. I am not built for that. So I would rather use my ability, whatever ability I have, to communicate and discuss this with younger people. And I do find that there is some effect of that. So it's not as if you sit down and say, oh yeah, I agree with everything that everybody is doing. No, you have to.
In one sense, I have also noticed that there's definitely a generational shift. The new students that I am also getting here in Seattle come in predisposed and pre-recorded already to the sense of an environmental crisis. And they feel like they need to do something and things do need to change. This is because I feel they think of their own future with much greater uncertainty than, let's say, you're in my generation and the generation before us thought about it. We just thought things would get better and better. We just have to push and work harder, and there'll be good actors and bad actors, but basically we will keep pushing, and we roughly have a sense of the path.
Yes.
But this new generation feels like, no, the future is not certain. In fact, it looks very, very unsure. So something fundamentally needs to change. I think that's also one of the reasons why they are much more attuned to the question of the climate crisis more than anything else. Which is why, one of the thinking that's going around, and which I think is possibly true, is that we are to blame. Modernist generation, we fucked up. We have delivered the world to where we are. What is your thinking about that?
It is true. Now, if I keep on feeling guilty about it.
No, don't feel guilty. I just want to know what you think about that thesis.
No. What I'm saying, yes, it is true that with the mindless use of resources, technologies which are destructive, all of that, we have really done a horrible job with the world as it is, and our contemporaries of our age are also continuing that same line of thought, and nobody seems to be getting to be able to get out of it. Yeah. So in that sense, it's really tragic, and the young people are right in being very angry with us.
Yes.
That's one. I try to avoid using words or concepts which are conclusive. So, for example, the word crisis or the word responsibility. Of course, it is true. I mean, I'm not claiming that it is untrue that there is a crisis. There is a crisis. But for a while, if I can let my mind be free of the huge shadow that the word crisis puts on you.
Okay.
Then one, so, Timothy Morton in his book, All Art is Ecological, he says, we have to learn to use the word maybe. And it's a small book, and he's done a wonderful job of taking away the huge, sort of fearful cloud, and allows you to sort of say, yes, wait, let me try and do something about it. Let me try and do in my own life. Yeah. So I think this is something which Gandhi tried to do, for example, or Ambedkar tried to do in a different way, in a different area of, and this is something which I think that sort of holding in of the fear and not letting it overawe you is something quite important. And if there's anything that the older generation can do, is to say, hey, I agree with you, but let's not get frazzled, and let's try and enter into this in a somewhat experimental frame, in an exploratory frame, and perhaps we might be able to do a little bit, and then maybe something happens. And that is part of that richness I was talking about, actually, that this sense that one is trying out in the without any real expectation that there will be a resolution, but trying out, and that gives you a very different stationing in relation to me.
No, I agree with that. I think languages of crises, flag waving, or cultures of scarcity are only serve, certain political ends. But since you have brought up Gandhi, and it just occurs to me, let's delve a little bit deeper into the question of fear.
Yes.
Because I do think that the new generation, and I think us too, are reckoning with the question of fear. And it has always struck me that, when Gandhiji talked about nonviolent resistance, that was always a practice of managing fear, right?
Yeah.
Because you had to be unbelievably brave,
courageous
to do that, right? I mean, it's So how might that transfer into the current situation? Because fear is definitely around. You tell the younger generations, let's work incrementally, or just let's work with maybes, fine. But they feel they're scared.
Yeah, true. So there was in his entire life, there was something called constructive activity. So every day you had to do a certain amount of constructive action, and it ranged from cleaning the toilets to participate in making the food, to taking care of the things being grown in the farm, to going and talking to people or taking care of the sick, and like that. So one of the things I think that the constructive activities are, in a sense, repetitive activities which allow your mind to wander. This he insisted on. And the other, of course, was his when he was a child, the lady who used to take care of him, she had taught him that if you feel afraid, take the name of Ram. Now, it's not to be taken as you only have to take Ram's name or Christ's name or something like that. What it meant was a recall to a larger and larger existence, which has its own phenomena.
Right.
And what your understanding, which gives you fear, is a limited understanding. And continuously, you got to remind yourself, wait, there could be something happening which I have not understood. And there are examples of that. There are wildernesses, for example, which have healed themselves on being left to themselves.
Sure.
Yeah?
Sure.
And it is this kind of healing that will be necessary more and more, both healing internally, that is of the self, but healing in the world. And this is something which requires a sort of ability to mindlessly do repetitive activity. That is also part of Riyaz, that you are not judging whether it is good for something or not. And I think this is something which has to come back into education as well. Yeah.
And into the practice of architecture.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
How would you define architecture today?
Ooh. You
In
really
this
want me to do that?
In this
Yes.
context, then what
Yes.
is architecture?
Yeah. One way is to think that we are trying to rearrange some relationships in a way that greater harmony can arise. And that we never know what is greater harmony perfectly. We have a sense for it, but we know it somewhat tentatively. And so you rearrange and hope, and then be ready to make a modification. And I think architecture is that rearrangement of relationships. And actually, that's the original sense. When you made a house, you were only trying to change the relationships between you and the world as it is all around you. That the rat doesn't come in, for example, or that the heat is taken care of. And you're rearranging. And that you have to do every day almost. So the act of architecture doesn't end. Every day you have to be alive to it. And therefore, the person who is going to inhabit that, which may not be the person who designed that, is equally an important person in the whole. And sometimes we don't know who is going to inhabit it. And then our imagination has to take a different model. So I think basically architecture is the rearrangement of relationships.
Architecture is the
rearrangement
of relationships. Excellent. We will put this as the top quote on top of this conversation. Let's turn a little bit. You hinted about this a little bit, but I want to return to it. What is your thinking on what is poorly called the sacred in architecture, but let's say the agency or presencing of higher or different kinds of consciousnesses in the rearrangement of relationships?
So the way I experience it, the sacred is really a kind of sense of wonder, a kind of astonishment that, wow, this is the world.
Yes.
That astonishment, that sense of wonder. Then it gets personified in different ways by different cultures. That's another matter. But the origin is this utter astonishment that there can be a world such as it is. In aesthetic theory in India, there is the theory of rasas, the juices, the emotions. And there are 9 rasas, originally 8, but now later 9th one was added. And it includes everything from, disgust to humor, to sadness, tragedy, all kinds. But any work which begins in any of the rasas has to finally end in one of two rasas. The first one is Adbhuta. Adbhut means astounding, astonishing, wonder striking. Yeah?
Right.
So that is Adbhuta.
Yeah.
And Shanta.
Mhm.
That is the serene, the quiet.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
Now, these are the two which give a sort of hint that there is something which is beyond
Mhm.
the explanations, and
Yes.
which is so astonishing that one is just left like a child with an open mouth and seeing some phenomenon, like,
Right.
wow. And that, I think, is possible in architecture in many, many ways.
Right.
Sometimes a simple change of texture does that, or the change of pace that you are required to do because of the rhythm of the things that are around you, or the light, or the landscape which reappears to you,
Oh, I
which
see.
was absent for a while, the horizon, which again says, "Who is such a
Right.
world?"
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
And
Right.
I think that is where the sacred really is. And therefore, the body, I think, with its structure of the 6 directions,
Mhm.
is the origin, because just as the work of architecture is a body, and me as a body, and when we see that there is a kind of togetherness about both of these, which includes the world, of course,
Mhm.
which includes the horizon, which includes up, down, gravity, right, left, all of that, front, back. At that point, the sense of astonishment that there can be a relation between what at first looks like a dead thing,
Mhm.
but the light suddenly made it alive and changed, and
Mhm.
so on.
Mhm.
So I think basically it's astonishment finally leading to a serenity.
That's a fantastic. That's the most astonishing definition of the sacred that I've ever heard, and it's fantastic because I personally completely agree with that
Well,
because I also sometimes will be sitting over there and I'm like, what is this?
yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
uh, Even when you start looking at it from the perspective of, astrophysics and so on, or even
Mm.
particle physics,
Yeah. Yeah.
you look around and like to produce this sunset, you think about the magnificence of just not the magnificence, the astonishment of what all
Astonishment.
has to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
I have no idea if it is a magnificence. But it is absolutely adbhut. It's
Yes.
astonishing.
It's
Uh,
astonishing. Yeah, as they say in the Upanishads, where words cannot reach,
hmm,
that is what it is. Yeah.
yeah. Well, sometimes in the Upanishads and this whole discussion about Advait and Dvait and so on, I
Mm.
feel that somehow it it moves in the direction of abstraction.
Yes. Yes.
And I think, this is a common link between, Greek philosophy and old Sanskritic philosophy. It all moves in the
Yeah.
direction of abstraction, and I'm never happy with fantastic abstraction. But
Yeah. But that's why the tantra is most important. The people who worked with their bodies,
yeah,
and
no, the tantrics, yes, yeah.
yes,
What do you mean by that?
you see, when I talked about the rasa theory,
Yeah,
I was talking about Abhinav Gupta,
yeah,
who was a great philosopher of Kashmir Shaivism,
okay,
and they are very close to the tantric practices.
okay,
And so they formulated the aesthetic theories of India.
Oh, they did?
Bec- Yes.
Kashmir
And
Shaivite? Huh?
yes, yes, yes. Abhinav Gupta is the greatest of them, and
Okay.
it's fantastic what he came up with, and it is absolutely, it's not abstract. It's utterly concrete
Yes,
because it
yes.
starts with the personal experience and the
Yes, yes.
astonishment that, and and though often Upanishads are explained in a kind of abstract way,
Yeah.
the Upanishads are also, they're the forest texts. They are the texts of those who were putting themselves into a completely new situation.
Hmm.
And they are very concrete at times, like,
Okay. Yeah,
how
no,
to
no.
explain. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's another discussion altogether.
Mhm.
But Abhinav Gupta is somebody who is worth going into.
I will. No, that's a good direction because I've been thinking more and more about Tantra in its various registers.
Yes, yes,
Because it seems to me that the universe
mm,
as an astonishment, which includes the phenomena of life and
yes,
consciousness,
absolutely.
is the experience of it
Yes,
is a line of describing what is commonly obfuscated as sacred abstraction, divine divinity. I mean,
yes,
it,
yes,
it
yeah,
feels to me that we can apprehend it without
yes,
recourse to magic.
yes. Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
And
no, that's that
for all you know, magic may be true.
no, no, magic is true. That is what I'm saying. You can experience it as true. You can look around it. It's
It's magic.
unbelievable. It
Magic,
is
yes.
like magic. It is like magic. Before we have to sign off on the second attribute, Shanti.
Shanta, yes.
No, no, no. How does that write into an aesthetic theory?
There's a constant movement going on. And sometimes it looks as if things are opposed to each other. They are arguing, they are clashing. And this in every work of art, this is a beginning point, because you can't do a work of art without having some things which are, for example, that bookshelf at the back of you, it has to have the horizontal shelves, but it needed to have the vertical supports. Of course, now we can do things without the verticals, but then there'll be other things which are hidden away. So that apart. So there will always be, in any manifest reality, but especially in a work of art, you will recognize the disparities, the clashes. Say in theater, for example, or in any other work, there will be always, and the work of art takes those, rather faces them, till a point is reached where there is a cessation of the clashing. It's not that the artist tries to put everything in a way in which they all, harmonize with each other, but there
Mhm.
is a cessation. There is a cessation because enough attention has been paid, enough attention to the fact of it. And then there is that feeling of utter serenity, of
Mm.
things not shouting.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that is the state where in Greek theater they called it catharsis,
Mm. Mm.
of having reached a point where you wept so much about the tragedy that affected Oedipus or whoever. But at the end, there is a catharsis. After
Mhm.
your tears are over, then there is a quietness. And that quietness is what Shanta is. Shanta
Mhm.
was added later to Indian aesthetic theory. Originally, it ended only in the Adbhuta.
When was Shanta added?
Oh, I wouldn't know the dates. I can check it out though.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But it's a later. There were 8 rasas. Then they said, no, no, there are 9 rasas.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, cessation. which is also shunyata,
Yes.
Shunyata is that which is neither +1 nor -1,
Yes.
from which we get 0, etc.,
Mm.
and which moves all in the direction of, nirvana and so on.
Yes.
As a non-abstraction,
Yes. Yes.
is an important thing to, I think, calibrate.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
again, I think often enough, these ideas are, again, moved in the direction of abstraction, as if they move into a kind of a formlessness and move you therefore closer to, a sort of a unmanifest divinity.
Mm.
But I like your description where you sort of face and
Yes.
observe the adbhutness, even the
Mm.
adbhutness of the world, the
Yes.
astonishment of the world
Yes.
and its
Yes.
conflicts, because
Yes. Yes.
it has conflicts.
Yes.
The universe
Absolutely.
is built on unbelievable conflict,
Mm.
and to face it and then know to experience a sort of pervasive shanti or shunyata.
Mm.
I'm trying
Mm.
to find out what would be a good English word for this.
Tranquility is sometimes used,
Yeah, but
it's not. Yeah.
it's a kind of
Could
it's a
it
sort of a
be
being at oneness with things.
being
Yeah,
at oneness? Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Accepting the nature of things.
Yeah, but it's in the very cultural context of the English language
Yeah,
that quietness is often thought of as quietism, a
yeah,
kind of negative, and it's always action which is given a higher priority,
sure,
even
sure.
if it is conflict.
Yes,
And
yes.
therefore the Sanskrit works with a different thing, and perhaps Greeks did it too when
Yeah,
they
Greeks
talked
did it
about.
too. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yes. Well, we have to move towards the end of the conversation, but I wanted to end by telling you that I was sitting in this wonderful new place that we have built, which is very shant on Orcas Island, which I'm hoping to invite. I'm inviting you right now to come and
Right.
spend a few days with me over here.
Great.
And I was talking to some friends, and we decided that the motto of that place was,
Mm.
don't just do anything, stand there.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yes.
Don't just do something, stand there.
Yes. 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 Great. Fantastic. Yeah.
Well,
To
we've
stand.
all, yeah, yeah.
To stand and be astonished.
Yes, to
That's
stand
it.
and be astonished. Just stand
Yes.
there and be astonished.
Yes.
Just
Absolutely.
stand there and be astonished by the phenomena, by being alive.
Yes.
I swear I woke up this morning, after spending a whole day, under the grip of simulated COVID through the vaccine. You wake up next morning and you're fine. And, I thought, it's astonishing just to be alive.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
It's always such a pleasure to talk to you, Chhaya. Thank you so much for making this recording with me.
Thank you, Vikram. This was really one of the most enjoyable conversations I've had in a long time. And I look forward to actually sitting down with you at that place and being astonished. Not sitting down, standing.
Standing, and we'll stand and be astonished together.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Architecture Talk. This is your producer, Mary Lee. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, and if you did, please subscribe and rate us on iTunes or Spotify. We would also love to hear from you if you have any suggestions on new topics or guests. You can always reach out to us on our website, Facebook, or Instagram. Thanks again, and until next time, this is Architecture Talk.